Hi everyone, welcome to Workout Wednesday. This week coming to you from Perth in Western Australia. My name is Gerard Duggan and I've been invited to host this week's Power BI exercise as part of the October Community Month, where members of the data community from around the world get the chance to set the exercise and provide a solution walkthrough. So let's take a look at what we are going to be producing. I decided to set an exercise around survey data, particularly one that collected answers in a Likert type scale, and see how we can visualize that along with Net Promoter Score using Power BI simple native visuals. If you're unfamiliar with what this is, you've probably taken a survey that requests an answer on a sliding scale, either numerically from 1 to 10 or categorically, something along the lines of strongly disagree to neutral to strongly agree. The answers to such surveys can be collated and analyzed using a Likert scale chart or a Net Promoter Score or a combination of the both. On my screen here, if you look at some of the examples, there's multiple ways. Here we have like a divergent bar chart with NPS on a table. If I go to the next couple, the NPS, you could do that on a bar chart as well. You can split up the scores for your negative scores, neutral and positive, or you can use a stacked bar chart, 100% bar chart as well. So there's many ways to visualize this type of data, but the underlying technique of making these is all very similar. Now, I developed this base technique after watching one of Andy Kriebel's Tableau tutorials on YouTube. I think it may have been part of one of his Makeover Monday exercises a few years back, but I decided to try and adapt that concept so that we could use it on Power BI. Okay, so if I take a quick look at the data set, it's just a generic survey requesting opinions on products, looking at design, quality, pricing, and there's about 1,000 people, and they're all giving their views either from strongly disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. All right, so with that, we'll actually jump into Power BI and go on to the next step here. Okay, you can either download the table from the link that was provided, or you can connect directly to the website itself, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use the web connector. So if you go and collected it through Power Query itself, so new source from web, we click OK, and we should get our table here. So you want to bring this in. So once we have our table in, we see that we have all of our columns, which you've seen before. And if I move to the last column, it's the column IDs at the end. So first step, we want to transform this, use the first row as headers. Next, I'm going to rename this as survey original, because there's a few things I'm going to do with it. And then I always like to have the ID on the far left, so I'll move this column to the right. Now next, it's the trick that we want to have here is we want to have all of these queries in one column and then all the answers in the other. So how we do that is we can select this ID column and we go to unpivot, and we can just say unpivot other columns, and you'll see now that we have our ID for the respondent, what the query was, their attribute, and then the response that came from that particular respondent. So that's the main step that's been done already for us now. So a word of caution, some queries can be considered either positive or negative. For example, if I look at the first one here, it says, I easily understood the use of the product. But then we also have like the third one here where it says the product's design is unintuitive. So the first one I would say is like a positive query where you're asking how easy it is to understand it. Then this one is asking if the product is unintuitive. So it's like a negative sentiment. So we need to take that into account when we're looking at that. So what I want to do next is to try and define that query sentiment. And to do that, I'm going to create a reference here. I'm getting this refresh. Remove the ID, remove the value, and then what I want is a deduplicated version of this. So if I go remove rows and remove duplicates, now I have a set of the queries that we want. And what I want to do here is to add an index starting from 0 and move that across to the left hand side and rename this table survey sentiment. Now what I want to do is, if I looked on this list, I can see that index number 0 is positive, number 1 is positive, number 2 is a negative sentiment, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are positive. Number 7 is saying the product's deformed, so that's negative. Number 8 is you think the product will not last for several years, which is a negative. And then I think the last one, number 14, is the product is not worth the price. So in all, we've got 4 out of these 15 queries are negative, and the remaining 11 are positive. So we want to try and capture that. So what I want to do here is create a blank query. And create a list, which is just those 4 numbers. So 2, 7, 8, 14, close curly brackets. That gives us that list, and we'll call it list negative. Now, if I go back to my survey sentiment here, and I want to add a custom column, I can call it sentiment that contains open brackets list negative, comma, index, close brackets, then. So what do we want to return? We want to return negative, else positive. Sorry, I just forgot the if statement at the start. Okay, so we're getting our sentiment column, which is showing which items are negative. So number 2, number 7, number 8, and number 14. So now we have these different queries as either a positive or a negative sentiment, and we'll see why we've done that in a few minutes. Okay, so the final step is to merge this original and sentiment table together. So if I go to the home screen and merge queries as new, use survey original, survey sentiment, and I use the attribute on both. I get 15,000 rows from the first and second table, so then we'll do a left outer join. So we get this merge table, which I'm going to call survey. Now, what we want to do is expand this sentiment. What we want, the only thing that we want is the sentiment itself. We remove this column prefix. We click OK. So now we have, for each of our queries and values, we have the corresponding sentiment value, which is what I was looking for and what that whole exercise was about. Another option here is we can add a column where we can extract text before a delimiter. I won't actually use this, but just in case someone wants to use it, if you wanted to know the overall category. So what I'm going to do just while we're here is rename these columns. So I'll just use that as category and subcategory for the query. And so now we have this value and the sentiment. What I want to actually do is now assign number values to these query answers. So we have the 5 answers ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And what I want to do is replace those with numbers from 1 to 5 for each. Now, because we have both positive and negative sentiment, if it was a positive sentiment and it's strongly agree, that would attract a number of 5. But it doesn't make sense if it's a negative sentiment and you strongly agree that it's negative, then you wouldn't also have a 5. You'd want to classify that as 1. So we want to create a calculation where we give a number based on both the value that we have and the sentiment. So we're going to do just a bit of a custom column here. So we add a column, custom column. So I'm going to call this my Likert value. So if the value is equal to strongly agree and sentiment is equal to positive, then 5 else. And then what I want to do here is probably, it's going to be easier if I just do copy and paste here, because it's going to be quite repetitive. So if it's agree, then it's 4. If it's neutral, then 3. If it's disagree, then 2. And if it's strongly disagree, then 1. Now, we have to do this again for the negative, so it's going to be opposite. So if it's strongly agree and negative, we say that's a 1. If it's agree and negative, it's a 2. If it's neutral and negative, it stays as a 3. If it's disagree and negative, it changes to a 4. And if it's strongly agree and negative, then that's a 5. And we lose this last else. Stick a null in at the end. So if I click OK, and I get my Likert value, which has numbers between 1 and 5 assigned for everything. So I change this to my whole number first. And that is everything that we needed to do in Power Query is done. We've got our ID, category, subcategory. We've got our value, our sentiment, and our Likert value. So we're good to go. We can click close and apply. Okay, so next we want to create a series of measures to help us build the bar charts that we want. So if I take a quick look at the first one, we're using a divergent bar chart. So we have our negative values, our neutral, and our positive values. And if you look at that, they're either side of a 0 y-axis. So we need to calculate the negative values as negative numbers, the neutral values as sort of spanning across the y-axis, and then our positive as positive numbers. If we want to look at something like a 100% stacked bar chart that's all positive, then all of our measures would be positive. So we're going to look at a series of measures that will help us do each and every one of these. Okay, so let's get to it. If I go in here, I've put those methods out here, so we're just going to build them. I can provide this file to people if they want to use this, if you let me know in the comments. So what we're going to do is start with some of the measures. So the first measure I will create is counting the positive scores. So if I write in positive count, let me just make this a bit bigger, equals, and if I calculate, count A, and then our Likert value, I'm going to apply a filter, and then our survey file, Likert value. I like to use the in function instead of or, but it's just a personal preference. Okay, oops. So that's us with a positive count. So that's going to be the basis for all of ours. So I can just copy that and paste it. And if I want to go for a negative count, oops. So I go for a negative count. What we want is the values that are 1 and 2. So they'll be considered negative. And because we want this as a negative score, so on the other side of the y-axis, we want to multiply this value by -1. So it'll give us this value, but as a negative number. So that gives us our negative count. And again, so that's giving us our positive and negative. Now we need our neutrals. But we said our neutrals, they span the y-axis. So we need half of the values as negative and half as positive. So if I go negative, and then I want to put in an n in this just to account for the fact that it's going to be the negative value. And it's actually -0.5 times calculate, and this is just going to be 3. I'll leave it as in, even though I can just leave it as 3, but so that gives us our negative, sorry, it's not negative count, it's neutral. So it's our negative neutral count. You'll see how this plays out as we build it. And I can copy this one because it's going to be easier to give us our neutral count P for positive. And I just take away that minus and I hit OK. Now, where we want to just build even like a conventional stacked bar chart, we might want to create just a neutral for all, so it gives just a completely positive score. So we can just take away this minus. So this will just give us the neutral scores, just a count for all of those, and we can use those to build our sort of 100% stacked charts. So that's neutral count all. And then our final one is for the negative. It's a bit the way I give it names here. It might be a little bit confusing for some people, but it's just the way I do it. So for the negative count, I put a P for positive, so it's the negative and the positive. But what we're saying here is anything that's 1 or 2, so that's sort of a detractor score. We want to count those as like a positive score. Again, you'll see how this is used later. Okay, so now that I've got those counts, I want to display those as percentages. So what I need to do is create another measure, and I call it all selected attribute. And it's basically, we want the total. So if we have a line item that's a query, for one of the queries, we want the total number for that query. Doesn't matter whether it's a negative, positive, or a neutral answer. We want all those so that we can divide our positive by all to give a percentage. So we're going to use all except on this. So calculate count A, and then our Likert value. Sorry. And we use all except. And we're going to use survey. And we're going to use the category and subcategory. Now, you don't necessarily need the category, but that's just in case someone wants to use it, then this should cover you for that as well. So next we want to create our percentages that we're going to use in our bar charts. So again, another quite simple calculation. So the percentage scores positive. Hoping that these are big enough. I'll maybe just see if I can zoom in. That seems to be okay. So I divide our positive count by our all selected attribute at a 0. And that's it. So again, none of these are too complex. So I get our neutral positive. Next one, so neutral negative. and then our percentage negative. And then if we want to do those additional options, I'll just do those two calculations as well. So, sorry, positive is always positive, so negative P. That's why it's always good to have sort of slightly conventional and organize your naming conventions so it's a bit easier to remember on the fly, even though mine aren't actually that good. Neutral all. Okay, so that's all our percentage scores. We want to make sure that these percentages are displayed as percentages. You can actually, go up here and click percentage, but what I like to do is a little trick is you can sort of do a mass reassignment here where you can just shift select all of your percentage scores. You go down to format, you click percentage format. If you want 0 decimal places or 1, leave that up to you what you want to decide, but that means that they're all formatted. You don't need to go through one by one up here. Okay, so I've got 2 more measures before we can finally start visualizing. So the first one is our NPS. So the net promoter score, or NPS, it's a simple calculation where we want to add the positive value score to the negative value score. I'll show it here. So what we do is, example here is we add this positive, so for this one to be 46%, and we add that to minus 21%. So what's that going to give us? 25%. So it'll be 25%, which is equivalent of 0.25. And you multiply that by 100, and it gives you a net promoter score of 25. So that's the simple arithmetic. So it's a fairly simple calculation that we put in. So we put in NPS is equal to 100 times, in brackets, percentage scores positive plus percentage scores negative, close brackets. It's as simple as that. Now in terms of ranking, if we want to rank our charts, I usually like to apply rank X formula so that I can then sort the charts in the way that I like. So just as a one final bonus measure, we're going to go with rank NPS which equals rank X. So I'm going to call it all. Oops. Survey. We're focusing on the subcategory here. NPS. We want descending, and that is that. So all that prep work is done. Now we can start building the visuals. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to try and create 5 potential methods of showing this Likert scale and Net Promoter Score. But you may come up with more, so feel free to share them if you have any new ideas. Here I've just created some standard backgrounds just to save a bit of time. And what I've done here is I've used, what am I using? Just one of the standard themes, high rise for colors. Okay, so for method 1, I'm just going to use a stacked bar chart. Drop it in here. And for the divergent bar chart, we start with the positive, negative, and neutral scoring. So I drop the subcategory into the y-axis. And then for this one, we just widen this out a little bit. You have to go with the negative scores first, and you work away from the y-axis. So it's a little bit, it's not very intuitive the way you have to do it. So if I drop in the scores neutral, negative first, and then negative, and then neutral, positive, and then scores positive. Oops. So that doesn't look very appealing at the minute, but let's sort this out. So we'll go into formatting. Y-axis. Bring this out so we can see the full. Change the title to survey query. On the move into the x-axis, we'll remove the title. That should be okay there. Come down, remove the grid lines, remove the legend, get rid of that. For the bars, I want my neutral to be this grey color, negative to be gold, and positive to be green. Then I also want to show data labels. There's a little trick here that for the neutral colors, I just want to turn them off and just leave the positive and the negative. Okay. Now I'll turn the title off too. Now what I want to do here is the rank NPS. I drop it, sorry, rank NPS. I drop it in the tooltips. If I drop it in the tooltips, it comes up here. So I can select rank NPS, and then I sort by ascending. So now it's starting to look a little bit better. I use a constant line here. I'm going to use it solid, and slightly darker than what we have there, so we can see the axis. I want to turn off the background color, and then I just want to adjust the height and size here. So I'm going 711. Position is 91. So got that kind of where I want. So next, I'm going to create matrix visual. So I select the matrix. Got to put over here somewhere. And again, I'm going to drop this subcategory in the rows and the NPS in the values. Sort it by rank from top to bottom. And now it's a matter of just formatting this table. All right, so we remove the formatting. We go to grid, the horizontal grid line on, keep it white. Grid line off, keep the border off. Go options. We want row padding of 6. Font equal to 12. And for values, text wrap, we need to turn this off. Column headers, we're going to go 12. Bold. Text wrap off again. We want to squeeze these columns and get rid of a couple of them. Column subtotals, totals, turn them off. We're going to specific column with NPS with that center aligned. Apply the header. And then for cell elements, can we get rid of this yet? Okay, I've got this turned on somewhere. Review rows. Text wrap turned off. Yep. Okay. Sorry, the width here should be 10. Okay, so we want to do cell elements. So for NPS, we want to go from green to gold. And font color, I just want to have it all as white. So we're almost there. Just a couple of properties. I had these set. And our position. So that's our, just change the background on this. So that's our first method one. Should hopefully match what we have here. Almost, hopefully. Yeah. I think this one, we just need to bring it to the front. It's not working, is it? All right. Yeah, so that's our first one. Um, first method, I don't think the remaining ones are going to take as long. The second one, it is literally I can drag these two in here. And it's as simple as I want to go to the y-axis, and what I want to do, I want to switch the position. I think I probably should have made these bigger or bold, but this is so that you can have the query in between the Likert scale and the NPS. So maybe you want to read and you see them side by side, so that might be an advantage in that respect. And in both methods, I've just added these arrows pointed up and down just for a little bit of context, and then just a brief commentary just on what this chart may be telling us, so that anyone who's reading this has a general idea of what it's saying. It's customer or the product is recognized as being durable, suitably priced, and intuitive to use, but customers were more neutral or negative on the aesthetics, the form and finish. So whether we want to use these in how we advertise or target customers, that would be up to sort of the company or whoever, the design team or whoever's in charge of marketing. And this is where we see why it's important to have consider both positive and negative. So we see there the top promoter is actually where we say, I think the product will not last for several years. Not almost everyone disagreed with that, and because they disagreed with it, it's strongly disagreed. Instead of being 1, it's actually a 5, so it becomes a positive item. So it's important that when you're doing these types of, when you're analyzing these types of surveys, you have a look at what the query actually is, so you know that if it's a mix of positive or negative, or it's just negative or all positive, you know how to encode them properly. Method 3 is quite simple as well. That matrix is quite tricky, but creating this type of chart is a lot easier. Because I can just drop in the subcategory, and the key measure is the NPS. Take the y-axis off. Grid lines turn off. Bars. Gradient. Into gold. That should be the NPS. I don't necessarily need a legend there. I'm just going to use the data labels themselves. I'm going to turn off the title here, but if you're actually creating one of these yourselves, you're probably going to want to have a title for these types of charts. Again, let's bring this to the front. So now again, if I compare this to what I had prepared earlier, it's thereabouts. I'll probably make this a little bit smaller. So that gives you your NPS as a bar chart. So you see how big or how the variance between the lowest NPS score and the greatest one. So it's a bit more intuitive than maybe the metrics, but that's depending on your preference. Method 4 is where we use our other measures that we created. So I can drop in our subcategory and then our negative positives, I think what I call them. Again here, I drop in the subcategory and then the neutral alls. And then again here, we want to drop in our positives. This our subcategory. They're all going from the greatest to the smallest because they're not ordering properly. So that's why we want to use our rank NPS. So drop that in tooltips. Rank NPS. So ascending. So all our negatives are at the bottom. Again, we drop this in our tooltips. So we're ascending. And then finally, so that's everything in there. And here we can drop in our subcategory and our NPS. This gives us our value. So this is an advantage if you want to show each individual components. You can see how the values are changing, which one has the biggest, neutral value, which one's the biggest positive, which is the greatest negative, etc. The only sort of drawback on this type of chart is that it takes up a lot of real estate. That's why here we've only got part of the query instead of all of it. But it is an effective way of communicating these scores as well. If I move on to the last one, which is just a standard stacked column. So I use a stacked bar chart here. Again, I can drop in subcategory, boom, and then I use my negative positive first, then my neutral all, and then the positive. This is giving me that. And I want to drop the rank in the tooltips. Again. Just want to so very quick formatting here. Data labels. I can leave the neutral ones on here if we want, just for the time being. If the title, I think it was. If I bring in the NPS score here. Just resize this. The legend turned on. And I think that's what we had. Yeah. So yeah, that is giving us each of our 5 potential methods of showing the NPS or the Likert scale, either as a divergent chart, split charts, or a stacked bar chart, along with using either either our NPS as a matrix type visual with numbers on them and color scale or gradient, or using the conventional sort of bar chart sign, positive and negative. So that's all from me. Let me know what you think. If you've got any alternate ideas in visualizing this type of analysis, I'd be really interested to know. So you can drop a comment in the video, or you can get in touch with me. I'll keep a lookout for entries on the Workout Wednesday page. But if you see me on LinkedIn or Twitter or anywhere else, feel free to tag me in your finished product and I'll come and take a look. Okay, thanks for your time and thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Bye for now.